Yep. Hi everyone. Welcome back to day 2 of the Asia Pacific Youth Network virtual gathering. Yep. Hoping that everyone is fresh and excited for the thematic sessions that are coming up today, as well as and also for this core session titled COVID-19 and Youth. I hope that you've also had the opportunity to join the earlier thematic sessions on on climate, on climate action. And I hope that you enjoyed the sessions as well. So we all have known that the past 2 years have been very, very unusual for a lot of us. I think it's most probably, I am pretty sure for a lot of us, it's the first time that we have came across something like this, a pandemic, and living with COVID-19. COVID-19 has definitely had a lot of disruptions to our lives. And when it first hit in a few months, personally as well, I also felt very lost. My education plans were disrupted. Life has changed for me as well, and I'm pretty sure that for a lot of you, it might be the same for you. Might also face a lot more challenges of different magnitudes in your life. I also like to take this opportunity to congratulate you for pushing through and coming this far, and surviving the past 2 years. I think that's already an achievement in itself. So please remember to give yourself a pat in the back, and even if things might not seem to be okay for now, just remember that it will hopefully soon. So yep. Without further ado, I would like to actually introduce you a very special guest speaker that we have for today to start off the session. We have Hannah Pasek from the Global Youth Mobilization. So the Global Youth Mobilization is an initiative by the Big Six youth organizations, which the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies is part of. And the Global Youth Mobilization champions local youth-led local solutions, and we aim to provide funding to empower young people to build back better in their communities. With that, I'd like to pass the floor to Hannah as the co-lead of the Global Youth Mobilization to bring you through what the Global Youth Mobilization does and how us, we as young volunteers can also engage in this project. Over to you, Hannah.
Thanks a lot, Michelle. Thank you for the warm welcome and great to see everybody joining us. Please do feel free to drop a message. I'm new to your sessions and I'm new to the gathering, so I'd love to hear where you're joining us from, and please do send in any questions that you might have throughout our little chat. So my name is Hannah. I am the co-lead for the Global Youth Mobilization. I'm based in Mexico City, so it's actually still Friday for me. But I'm really happy to be with all of you in Asia Pacific for this event, and in particular with all of the societies, the Red Cross and Red Crescent societies from the Asia Pacific region. You're all doing an amazing job, and we are very, very proud to have you as part of the Big Six collective and the Global Youth Mobilization as well. I'm going to be guiding you through a little presentation that's going to explain more from our side of the Global Youth Mobilization about what we do and how we support young people in addressing the challenges that the COVID-19 pandemic has created for everyone. And I'm sure so many of you have been through experiences where COVID-19 has created some unprecedented changes and challenges in your communities. And the Global Youth Mobilization started precisely because of that, because we wanted to collectively, through the power of the Big Six organizations, support young people. So if we go to the next slide, you're going to see that we have a short agenda. So we're going to give you a quick overview and then introduce local solutions, which is a really exciting element of the work of the Global Youth Mobilization. And we're going to do a quick question and answer session at the end. And just very briefly, in terms of what is the Global Youth Mobilization, it started in December 2020, so at the height of the pandemic, when young people were being largely forgotten in the whole discussion about the consequences of COVID-19. And this is why the Big Six youth organizations came together to support young people and to really help them to improve their lives and the lives of their communities in a COVID-19 world and a post-COVID-19 world. It aims to address the negative impact of the pandemic on young people in particular and support them in their response and recovery efforts. And it's supported by the Big Six youth organizations, which are comprised of the World Organization of the Scout Movement, the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts, the World YMCA, the World YWCA, the Duke of Edinburgh International Award, and the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. And it's actually supported by the World Health Organization and the United Nations Foundation. In particular, its funding comes from the COVID-19 Solidarity Response Fund. Next slide, please. And you can see that we also have 3 areas of work. There's lots of work that's been happening in this last year. You may have heard that we hosted a summit in April last year, a virtual summit for all young people around the world. And it was just one of the activities whereby we actually kind of situate them across 3 key pillars. One is grassroots activation for local solutions, and this is what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the presentation. The second is driving national change, and this is really looking at national organizations and national societies of the Big Six organizations and supporting them in supporting young people directly. And the final one is championing young people, and this is really tied to a lot of the advocacy work that we do, both on global level, but also supporting young people at local and national level. Next slide. And just very briefly, in case you haven't heard before about the Big Six, we're a collective of really, really big organizations in terms of reach. We have representation in over 190 countries around the world, and 250 million young people engage in our programs on a yearly basis. We also have a network of youth engagement specialists and a lot of programs that vary across each of the 6 organizations, but are mainly based on non-formal education and learning, on community service, and on life skills and sustainable development. Each of the Big Six organizations is structured differently and has a different approach, but overall, they all work on the principle of federations, having national organizations and societies join into a global organization. And finally, there's really a lot of diversity in reach, and the capacity as well varies across different countries and across different organizations. So now we're going to dive into the local solutions. And to get a break from listening to me, I am going to share my screen and show you a quick video. This is a video that we've produced just recently and published maybe less than 2 weeks ago, that talks a lot about local solutions. Let me just get that started again. There we go. Sorry about that. Seems like the connection is a little bit. I'm really, really sorry, but it seems like we're having some connection challenges. Yeah, it seems like the connection challenges really didn't let us show this in full, but let me quickly send you all a YouTube link so you can all check it out on your own as well. And in the meantime, we can come back to the presentation because the presentation is on. Perfect. Thank you so much, team, for helping with getting the video going. It's always tricky with connections and internet, especially when it's, yeah, playing videos on platforms. So thank you so much. You've already seen some of the information in the video, but we wanted to just share with you and reiterate a few points. So far, we've covered actually 4 cycles. We just concluded the 4th cycle of funding. And the applications that we received are currently in review, but we still have 2 more cycles to go. So there's still a lot more funding to go, and there's still a lot more support to be given to local solutions. A few other statistics to note is that in the first 3 cycles, we've distributed around 600,000. So we still have another 600,000 to go for the remaining 3 cycles. So far, we've had applications from 41 countries. And we're really looking forward to increasing that. And Asia Pacific is one of the regions where we would love to see more applications from. We also have the opportunity to receive applications from both individuals and informal groups or local registered grassroots organizations. And you can see the proportion of those as well in the orange box. And finally, the average age of applicants is 26.2, but actually anybody between 14 and 30 years of age can apply. So if we go to the next slide, you can see a little bit of which countries have been engaged so far. I'm not going to go into details, but suffice to say that, yes, we would really like to see more applications coming in from the Asia Pacific region indeed. So if we go to the next slide, you can see some of the funding themes. And you may have noticed through the promotional video that there's a lot of topics that we cover through the local solutions. Some of those are listed here, primarily COVID-19 prevention and protection measures and vaccination, but then also addressing the impact of education disruption, improving employability, improving mental health and physical health, providing access to the internet or digital innovation, empowering young people to lead in their community, combating the impact of domestic violence and gender-based violence, and many other topics. And what is important to stress here is that really we recognize from the Global Youth Mobilization's perspective that there are so many areas of life that have been affected by the pandemic, and there are so many challenges that communities face. So whichever one it is that you consider is a challenge in your community that has been caused or exacerbated by the pandemic, and you have a solution to apply for, you can send us your application. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes as well. So if we go to the next slide, you can see that this describes what the cycle of receiving and reviewing applications looks like. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but suffice to say that we actually have a really well-established system by now. And the core part of that system is a group of about 50 youth panelists. So they're your peers, young people from all over the world who engage with us on a regular basis to review applications, provide their feedback, and decide which ones are going to be the ones that get funding. So one of the people who's actually very heavily involved with this process is with us today, and that's your very own Michelle. So I'm going to invite Michelle to share with you a little bit more about what is it like to be on a youth panel, what is it like to chair a youth panel in Michelle's case, and if she can also give you some tips and tricks in terms of how to prepare an excellent application that will receive funding. Michelle, over to you.
Yeah. Hi, Ryan and Hannah, for the great presentation on global youth mobilization and what we do. So, as you might have already known me as your regional youth commissioner, I also sit on the Global Youth Mobilization Board as IFRC's youth representative. So I've had the privilege and opportunity to chair a couple rounds of this local solutions panel, and can only say that I'm very, very impressed by the quality of project submissions by young people from all over the world. It's just very amazing to see how we're still able to mobilize in our local communities, even though in this with limited resources during the pandemic. The youth panelists that we have on our panels are also very, very critical and youth leaders who ensures that all the due process are really or due criteria are actually taken into account while reviewing a single uh, application. So there are a few things that youth panelists actually look into when they're reviewing your applications. This include whether applications are innovative, whether applications are sustainable, can they last and sort of like be self-sufficient beyond the funding that we're providing for them as well. We're also looking at impacts of these applications, and with the seed funding that we're providing to the applicants, how would they be able to reach out to as many people as possible in their local communities or in their countries. We're also looking at things such as, because we know that the pandemic is still ongoing, and although we are trying to return back to our normal lives, we still need to practice COVID-19 preventive measures. So youth panelists are also looking into applications or applicants that would be able to organize their initiatives and still adhere to the local and global COVID-19 preventive guidelines. Yeah, so that's around it basically. In terms of budgeting as well, of course, you've had for smaller budgets that are requested, or smaller funding that's requested, it's usually not as critical as the larger group of fundings, which are the 1,500 and the 5,000 fundings, because for those larger projects, then there would definitely be more things to consider to whether the funding requested is equivalent to the impact that we're expecting, or the applicant is expecting. So as Hannah has mentioned earlier as well, there are a wide variety of themes that we cover and look forward to fund. It can be directly COVID-19 related, but also just other themes that might have, or areas or social issues that might have been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. So I would also like to urge you, not only as a Global Youth Mobilization Board member, but also as your Regional Youth Commissioner, to take up this opportunity and apply for the Global Youth Mobilization Local Solutions funding. Um, it's um, it's the first thing that I think anyone have done such thing, something of this sort. A lot of other people or organizations are also looking at how we can actually replicate this kinds of opportunities for more young people to be able to obtain resources to carry out their local solutions and contribute back to their communities. Where if you're aware, the Limitless initiatives by the Solferino Academy is actually also powered by the Global Youth Mobilization funding. Those are part of the national projects that Hannah have also mentioned earlier. So if your activity or your initiative didn't manage to obtain the funding from Limitless, you can also still apply to the Global Youth Mobilization Local Solutions Project and have a chance to be funded. It's also worth mentioning that, let's say even if your application gets rejected for the first time around, we'll normally revert back to the application to the applicants with constructive feedback on how your application can improve and what areas is the application still lacking in, and you'll be able to submit for a further round. Or you can also take this application and look for other local or global donors to then fund your application. I hope that this all sounds very, very interesting to you. I've also seen that Hannah sent the link to the local solutions page on our website for you to view, and please consider to apply. Yeah, I think we're also very, very happy to take any questions that you might have. But for now, I'm passing it back over to Hannah.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Michelle. And so many great tips there for everybody to consider in terms of applying. I would only urge you one thing, and you'll see that as soon as you enter into the website and click on the application button, we have 2 more rounds. The first one is going to close on the 1st of May, and then we have another one, the final one, closing in July. Definitely start working on your applications now and apply now, because as Michelle said, even if you don't get through in the first round, you may be able, with some constructive feedback from our youth panelists, to get a chance in a second round. It's really, really exciting for us to see the amazing impact that these projects are having. And you can actually explore that on our website as well. So on the same link that I've shared with you, you can find some of the stories that could potentially inspire you. You may be able to see what some other of your peers are doing around the world, how they're supporting their communities. And you're welcome to replicate those ideas and obviously adapt them to the needs of your own community. And pretty much, I mean, I would suggest that you go and explore the website and just take a look at what it offers. The application is extremely simple. You need to obviously prepare your topic and think about what you're going to present as the activities, but it's very, very straightforward in terms of application process. And you can always come back to it as well. So it doesn't have to be done from one go. You can consult with your friends, with your peers that you're working on. And the other thing that's really important is that you can apply either for an individual grant, which is up to $500, or you can apply as either an informal group, which means that a group of friends that have a great idea can apply together, or you can apply as a registered local grassroots organization. So there's a variety of options through which you can apply, and if you decide to go for the other two, you're going to have more flexibility in terms of the ask of the budget, because we have other tiers of 1,500, 3,000, 5,000, which basically allow you to increase your budget and plan for more activities should you decide to do so. Whichever one you do decide to do, we really encourage you to consider how you can support your communities and what you can do to help them. So with that, I wanted to leave at least a little bit of time, maybe 5 minutes, to take any questions that you might have about the process. I'm sure Michelle would also be happy to answer some of your questions. I've already seen that in the Q&A, we've had a question from Dan who said, what can we as youth leaders do to get more involved in this? And I've already responded to your question. You can apply for a local solution. And obviously, if you have any questions, definitely reach out to us. You'll find all of the details on the website. And happy to take any further questions.
Maybe to add on to Hannah's response as well, I think as young people, we are very known for our expertise in, sharing information very quickly. So it'll also be very great if you as young leaders can help us to spread about this initiative in your local communities, in your countries, because as Hannah mentioned earlier, it's not something that's, only for us in the Red Cross or Red Crescent, but also for other young people that might just want to make an impact in their community. So please,
Absolutely.
yeah. So please
It's
help us to share this around.
It's a great point, Michelle, and do spread the word. Use the video. I'm going to send you the link to the video as well, because it's a lot of fun to share that also with friends, and it gives a really, really good overview of what we just talked about. We'll just wait for if there's any more questions. Anybody else who would like to know anything in particular about the global youth mobilization and the local solutions?
So there's a question from Bobo that I believe Hafiz have just shared on the screen. Is there any of any projects or ideas from the local solutions that we're very inspired by? Hannah have been consolidating the report. So while doing that, do you have any projects that you have been very amazed or inspired by? And I'll share mine later.
So I've been really, really impressed by projects that have both a social and an enterprise purpose. In some cases, young people have, for example, one that I really liked was a project where young women worked on creating menstrual pads and also raising awareness about menstrual hygiene. And it was a social enterprise that enabled them to actually use those products and produce them and sell. So that was one of the projects that I think it's very interesting to observe how a setting in which a social enterprise could actually be established with the support of local solutions. I also really enjoyed a project about a podcast in Venezuela that was raising awareness among the people and just general public about the importance of COVID-19 protective measures, and really kind of talking to the audience, especially a youth audience, about the importance of wearing masks, washing your hands, keeping distance, etc. So it was really good to see those kinds of projects as well. There's been also projects on mental health, which is obviously a huge issue that we've seen in a lot of countries around the world, almost everywhere around the world. Young people have mentioned that mental health challenges have been really, really a big pain point during the pandemic. And we've seen several projects that have offered mental health support to young people in general, but then also to young people in underrepresented communities and vulnerable communities. And it was excellent to see that there were projects providing support directly to them as well. So that's just a few examples. I'm sure Michelle can share her favorites as well.
Yeah, I mean, on the point of mental health, I remember a particular project, I think, in my first panel review round. It's a very, very simple initiative. It's basically organizing slumber parties to help local communities cope with mental health. And that really speaks to me, right? Because as a young person myself, I know how, we have experienced quite some mental health challenges during the pandemic as well. And if you remember, and I hope most of you have also had the opportunity to join the Asia Pacific Youth Network Cafe that has been organized. That reminds me of this kinds of initiatives where young people just come together and conduct peer-to-peer support and be there for each other in times of need. So yeah, it can be something that's very simple, but as long as it has a great impact on your communities, I believe the youth panelists would be happy to approve funding for it.
Absolutely.
Yep. We would, I guess, do a final call for questions. If you have anything else that you'd like to know about the Global Youth Mobilization or the Local Solutions Initiative, please feel free to let us know. You can also contact us, as Hannah mentioned earlier, anytime if this concerns arises after the virtual gathering.
I'm going to drop also the email address, so you can all note that as well, because that's where you can get any particular questions that you can't get answered from the website. If you have something that you couldn't find the information on, please do feel free to send us a message.
Yep, cool. I guess if there are no other questions, we would then release Hannah because it's very late for her as well. She's based in Mexico, but would like to, on behalf of the Asia Pacific Youth Network Task Force members, appreciate and really convey our gratitude to you, Hannah, for being here with us today and sharing with us about the Global Youth Mobilization Project and inspiring our youth leaders from the region with all of this very amazing COVID-19 youth-led solutions. Once again, thank you, Hannah.
It was such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm really looking forward to seeing some applications from all of you coming in the next rounds.
Cool. I'm sure our youth will be motivated to apply. Yep.
All right. Thank you. Take care, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your gathering.
Cool. See ya. Bye.
Bye.
Alrighty. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, thanks, Vanken. I hope that you enjoyed the short, succinct, but I think very informative sharing from our Global Youth Mobilization co-lead. I apologize as well, as I felt like I haven't really properly addressed a lot of you. But thank you for sending in your greetings earlier on in the session. I'm happy to see that there's still so many people engaged in the second day of this session. We have Bobo from Hong Kong, Marian from Melbourne. We also have representatives from Philippines Red Cross, from China, from Sri Lanka, Singapore, Malaysia, Cambodia. There's a lot of Southeast Asian representation. I'm very proud. Pacific as well, Kiribati. Yep. Thank you so much for joining us today in this core session on COVID-19 and youth. So I guess we would also actually like to hear about your thoughts that is happening during the COVID-19, your thoughts with regards to the COVID-19 pandemic. Please give me a second. Yeah, we would actually love to ask you some questions with regards to how you think COVID-19 has had an impact on your life. We hope that this could be an interactive session so that I don't feel lonely since I'm the only speaker here right now. If you're aware, you should be able to see a raise hands button below your slides. I think beside the volume buttons of your screen. And if at any point of time you would like to speak up or like to share your views, please feel free to, because once you click on the raise hands button, we can then invite you on stage as well to share and to hear from you. Yep. So next slide, please. Thank you to the tech team for bringing the slides up. So my first question to all of you is, can either leave it in the chat box or or raise your hands and we can invite you up on stage. My first question to everyone here is, how are you feeling since the COVID-19 pandemic happened? It is a safe space here, so we hope we feel free to just let us know your genuine feelings and thoughts over the past 2 years. Mirabelle mentions that she is always adapting. Yeah, I think the word adaptation is something that is very relevant to a lot of us because it always seems like, cases are okay for a moment, then there's a new variant that comes in, and then things are going back to, stricter measures again. So yeah, I can personally relate now as well. I think Rochelle also agrees that she's always adapting to the changes. Razor Race Andres, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, mentions that he's exhausted. Would you also like to share with us why you're exhausted? Although, I mean, if I am not imposing, I guess I might be able to get where you're coming from as well, because yeah, we're just constantly, it seems like this is a never ending cycle. At the start of the pandemic, we feel that, oh, maybe it's only going to last a few months then turn into a year, and now it has been almost 2 years, right? So it's very exhausted for a lot of us, especially in the youth age, as we go about the transitions in life and just figuring out what we are supposed to do in life, right? So yep, we're exhausted, but would like to reiterate what I've said in the beginning of the session. Please hang in there, and please, seek out for support from people that you trust, so that you would be able to get through even the worst of days. From Erin, she mentions that she's a bit overwhelmed, and for a very long time Australia was going for zero COVID strategy and was very disconnected from the rest of the world. Yeah, that is very sad to hear about as well, because connection is something that I guess a lot of us have lost some touch with, especially in the pandemic. We can't go out physically and just have coffee at a cafe with a friend. We cannot even, for some of us, we cannot even go to university, go to school, where we spend most of our time in, actually, or even work, meeting with our friends, meeting with our mates and our colleagues. Interactions are reduced to us and our computer screens. And yeah, so sometimes it can feel that there's no support. Personally, I started university during the COVID-19 period as well, and I find it tough to make friends in a virtual environment. So yep, Ariane, thank you for sharing, and feel for you as well. And hopefully, as Australia is opening up borders now, we hope that the COVID-19 pandemic will still be under control, but you'll still be able to sort of, be more connected again with the rest of the world. Shi mentions that she cannot go abroad and traveling is pretty hard. Oh, I'm sure a lot of us here are waiting to be able to travel, like pre-COVID times again. Yep. Yeah, feel free to continue sending in your comments. Your comments are very valuable for us to actually understand, what we, the youth, are actually facing in reality every day. And this information is very useful for us to, as a network as well, to be able to devise some strategies or initiatives to support you as we move forward, living with the pandemic and in the new normal. Next slide, please. Yeah. So, in what areas does COVID-19 have an impact on your daily life? I believe that this is a poll question. So, if the tech team would be able to just send in the poll, while in the meantime, I'll also continue. Oh, okay, the poll is up. So you can just pick, any area that and tell us how COVID-19 have had an impact on your daily life. Once again, it's an open invitation to everyone. If you would like to speak up, feel free to click on the raise hands button, and our tech masters will then bring you up on screen. I would think that I would guess that there'll be people taking on education, because John mentioned earlier that student life has been affected. Oh, Andy mentioned the music concert. Um, is it a virtual music concert during the pandemic, or are you asking for us to host a music concert here at the virtual gathering? Yeah, let us know. And then, we might ask the tech team to whisk something up. Oh, yeah. A couple of you mentioned it's all COVID-19 has affected us in all of this. And yeah, you can definitely take all because yeah, like there's no, just one aspect of our life that's actually affected, I guess. How we always say it's like certain policies and strategies are cross-cutting. I think COVID-19 also has a cross-cutting impact to our life in all areas. you know, um, pre-COVID-19 times, I always feel like I don't have the time to go home because I'm always stuck outside doing something. But like during the COVID-19 pandemic, I feel like I'm staying at home too much. So sometimes I would say also things that it's easy to take things for granted. Going out and being able to, I would say, see each other's faces seems like something that was very easy to do prior to the pandemic. But post pandemic, yeah, because I'm in a room with a lot of other people, though we are physically distanced, we still have to practice, preventive measures. Yeah, Mariko, are we able to show the results of the poll? Oh, but on my slide, it's okay. Yeah, all right. So you can see here the results of the poll. Education or work has been, one of the largest impact, I guess, with 25% of people voting. For that, even volunteering is also affected. I guess we can explore more about it in a while. Relationships were also affected. Health and quality of life are all affected. I would say quite equally. For those that answered others, would you like to also share with us in the chat box with regards to how it has and what other aspects of your life have been affected by COVID-19? Someone mentioned that lockdown has made us very fat. Yeah, I think as the Red Cross or Red Crescent, the right message to send here is please remember to also take care of your health. Um, with regards to having a healthy diet while being cooped up at house in the house. I understand that stress eating might be something that some of us engage in. Personally, I might be a victim of that as well. But please remember to also take care of both your physical and your mental health. I guess we can move on to the next question. So one of the biggest challenges or like impacts that COVID-19 has had on our life is in the area of work or education. So would you also like to tell us how have your working or studying mode changed? I understand that a lot of us have gone virtual. Are you able to then go back to school now after 2 years, or are you still stuck working from home? I think it's also important to just address that when we're talking about impacts, it can also be positive impacts on your daily life. So, maybe transitioning to a virtual mode is actually more suitable for you because you have your own time or you can schedule around your time better, or it's more flexible for you to engage in your own activities. So, Adli mentioned that as a doctor, he can't work from home. Yeah. I would just like to express my gratitude to Adli as well as all other doctors or frontliners out there, whether you're in the healthcare industry or like essential services, serving your local communities in times of needs. We know that you have not had the chance to rest. While a lot of us are being cooped up at home, you still have to go to work every single day and face the multiple challenges and tribulations of that COVID-19 has brought to us. So please join me in, giving a virtual clap, I guess, to all of our frontliners, actually including a lot of you here as well, I believe, as volunteers who have actively contributed and still go out on the field in your local communities to assist those who are more vulnerable. I see that there's a lot of working from home. Bobo mentions that, but she has to reply to a boss's messages 24/7. Yeah, so I think a lot of us are also struggling with work-life balance. So please remember to take note of that as well, because all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Yeah, so I hope that your bosses will be able, or your employers will be able to understand that a bit better as well, and not require you to reply to work related matters 24/7. Used to work from home for a number of months. I hope that it has changed for you now and you're able to go back to work physically. My lecture left me alone without knowing anything, and there is no Zoom meeting. I'm so saddened to hear that. I hope that things work better for you. You can reflect this to your university as hopefully, and hope that things will be better, because we all know that learning has been very, very disrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And a lot of us are also worried that going through the education during this time, our education during this times, might have us end up at the end of the 3 years not knowing what to do actually, or not obtaining the knowledge that we would have if the pandemic didn't happen and we are able to go back to school physically. Next slide, please. Yeah, I think we have somewhat also addressed this in together with the previous question. You guys, a lot of you have also told us about your thoughts and feelings about not being able, or in the mode change of your working or study environment, or not being able to do it the way pre-pandemic. So we can go to the next question as well. Yeah, I think this is very interesting for us as the Red Cross Red Crescent movement, especially because we would like to know how volunteering has actually changed for you. Once again, please feel free to raise your hands if you would like to share some of your experiences during the COVID-19 pandemic. And we're happy to also hear from you. Yeah, I think Oren also raised a very important question, important statement about how accessibility issues have also exacerbated during the pandemic. Some students who lived in more rural areas do not have good access to internet, or do not have devices to be to be able to access digital learning platforms. And for them, they might have went through the last 2 years without being able to really obtain quality education. So we know that a lot of Red Cross Red Crescent teams are also out there working to support these communities, and we really thank all of you who are doing that as well. Yeah, would you also like to tell us, in your volunteering experiences, how has it changed for you? Are you able to look for new opportunities of volunteering with your national societies? Are they more open to virtual training courses for volunteers? I think there's a comment earlier from Dongyu from China, that online meeting has become a common way for communications, even for HIV/AIDS peer educator training in Shanghai. They have utilized online courses and examinations to avoid risk. I think that's a very good adaptation in times of this pandemics. And yeah, I would love for you to share, these resources with us as well, and maybe share your experiences with other national societies to see how other national societies can also adopt and contextualize these practices in their national societies. Ray's mentioned that the pandemic has also allowed them to grow and learn more. And I'm great to hear that. Oh, you're now the national trainer of the Red Cross Youth Services in Philippines. Congratulations, Race. Next slide. Please continue to let us know um what you think about, or how volunteering has changed for you, because we would really, as you know, a volunteer based organizations, I think it's really important for us to know how volunteering trends are shifting during the pandemic, as well as, you know, post pandemic, to be able to actually be stay relevant and continue to attract and retain our volunteers. Yumino from Japan mentioned that there's more digital touch points with Red Cross Red Crescent colleagues, as well as the community, and she feels that we could also develop literacy to use online tools in RCRC activities. I think that's also very true. Throughout the past 2 years, we have been able to explore a lot of different platforms, such as the one we're on right now, AirMeet. And there's also opportunities actually for a lot of and entrepreneurs to come up with digital tools to cope with the needs of the pandemic. Yeah. Jovan also mentioned that a lot of this paved the way for him to be where he is right now and to serve those who are the most in need. He urged all of us to unleash the volunteering in our heart. I would just like to join Jovan in you know, spreading his message out to more of us. And would also like to thank everyone again for still actively volunteering during these hard times. Can we go to the last question, please, Hafiz? Yep. Michael, I guess from, if I'm not mistaken, from Singapore, has also mentioned that a contactless essential aid distribution. That I think that's very, very interesting as well, to see how, you know, we can actually conduct contactless distribution while still adhering to our policies of, you know, ensuring that aid is actually delivered to the right people. To have virtual or hybrid engagement in events and meetings, to conduct micro learning sessions, as well as to emphasize on split team and business. Yeah, I saw that sorry, I think my connection went south for a moment there. But yeah, I think what Michael has just mentioned as well is all very, very important for us as well, to ensure that, for example, our national society operations don't stop if someone in our staff members is COVID positive, and also to explore new ways of service delivery in the COVID-19 pandemic situation. So I see that some of you have already responded to my final questions on what you're looking forward to in this new normal. Jovan mentions that he's looking forward that knowing that through the Red Cross or Red Crescent's help, we can touch the lives of other people, provide them hope, and that despite these challenging times, there exists a silver lining. Yeah, I think it's very important to also mention that the work that we're doing really touch hearts, save lives, because you never know, right? Maybe the aid that you're delivering to particular persons, or a chat that you're having with someone with regards to the issues that they're facing, might just be the reason of some communities being able to sustain for another day or another month. So please never ever underestimate the work that all of you are doing, even though sometimes it might seem like we're not doing a lot. Really, it's not about the level that we're contributing at. It doesn't have to be something that's very large scale on an international or a national level. But if today you manage to assist a person in your local community, I think that's already a win. And you know, small wins like that would eventually contribute to big wins. And if there's more people like all of you out there, I believe that we can all look forward to a better world, especially and look forward to building back better after the pandemic. Yep. Without further ado, I hope that I am not taking up too much of our time, because we aim to finish this session on time. I would like to invite Ms. Mariko Hirai, the Asia Pacific Regional Youth Delegate, to present to you a document that has been created last year with regards to youth volunteering rhythm as on the COVID-19 pandemic front lines. So yeah, this paper is has a particular focus on children, adolescents, and young adults. Initially, we were expecting another speaker, Marcel, which is the youth coordinator from Geneva, to actually present on this, but some urgent issues came up, and Mariko has gladly agreed to step in. So, yep, we'll like to welcome Mariko to the stage. The floor is yours, Mariko.
Hi, thank you so much, Michelle, and thank you so much for participants too to share your feelings and experience in the chat box. We really appreciate your active participation and honest sharing. So thank you so much. From now on, I'm sharing about IFRC's recent publication regarding COVID-19 and youth actually children, adolescents, and young adults. This research has been conducted in 2021 at the global level, and I will not go into detail what was the finding that the young people are facing, but if you read this document, you will find a lot of if influence for the young people. But I think you are the young people, so you are already experienced those things, but you will find a lot of similarity in these findings. So today what I wanted to share it with you is regarding the policy recommendation, because this document actually you can use when you have a discussion or when you would like to promote more youth engagement and to ensure the youth engagement in your activities, etc., etc. Because we would like to emphasize that it's important to ensure the youth will be included and will be invested to protect youth and to have a meaningful youth engagement. So that's why we wanted to promote this document to use in your national society or in your activity, and also in with your national society senior leaders, so that they will understand why it's important to ensure the participation of youth in whatever they do, not just the COVID-19 related activities, but the activities in the COVID-19 existing world. So, so now I would like to go to the next page, please. So policy recommendations. There's number of policy recommendations on this document, but if summarized, it will be looks like this: changing our ways, tailoring and localizing for the future, safety, youth-friendly protection and well-being, and nurturing youth-led influence and impact. So for the changing your ways, maybe you are already think that existing systems and mechanism in the Red Cross or in your organization may be a little bit old-fashioned and top-down, exclusive, and adult-led. So you may find a little bit difficulties when you do activities, etc. So we must continue to advocate for key Red Cross represent principles of meaningful youth engagement across our leader membership and towards our external partners, to be more to change in more meaningful and effective ways. So we need to change ourselves to adapt to this situation. And also it's important to yeah it's also important to mention about the opportunities for the young people to vision and co-create adequate and decent pathway to their future. And for the second point, tailoring and localizing for the future. So the activities and is happening in your local community. So it's important to ensure the approach of the people-centered humanitarian aid. So we recommend to have easy access to youth-friendly information and services. So and also uh, we need to have the advocacy and awareness raising initiatives, which is co-created by and with youth, and this should be promoted locally and globally. And the third point is about safety, youth-friendly protection and well-being. So as you already imagine, safety is the first priority. So whatever we do, it's important to protect youth and the children, uh, yeah, especially in low and middle income communities. And of course, like this meeting, safety in virtual spaces must be effectively strengthened. So this is very important in our COVID-19 pandemic world. And of course, mental health, well-being is very important to be addressed. And also child rights, child protection, and is also very important uh, to have safe environment for everyone. And last point, nurturing youth-led influence and impact. So it's important to establish opportunities for young champions and youth pioneers to connect and network with other peers. So this platform, as a Asia Pacific Youth Network, is also addressing this. But yeah, having those opportunities is very important. Yeah. So that's the overview of the recommendations. So I would like to lastly say that it's also important that we will have the meaningful youth engagement. So I recommend you to have this document and then discuss with your national society how we will include youth in your activities in a meaningful way. So I'll share the link in the chat, so please have a look. And back to Michelle. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks again, Mariko, for the quick sharing on the policy recommendations of the COVID-19 discussion paper that has been developed by the IFRC last year. Yeah, as Mariko has mentioned earlier, I think it's very important for all of us here as young leaders of our national societies to bring this document back to our national societies and, advise our senior leaders as well as the national society on how we could work better with young people in the COVID-19 pandemic, and acknowledge and recognize their efforts as well in COVID-19 pandemic recovery and response efforts. Thank you so much, Mariko, for the sharing. We'll move on to the last portion of this core session. We would now like to actually discuss on the roles of Red Cross or Red Crescent youth in a post-pandemic world. So if I might once again have the slides. Yep, as you can see, we would love to know how you think youth can actually can or should what do you think we should or can continue to do in the COVID-19 pandemic response and recovery efforts? So we have a few aspects here in relation to, firstly, volunteer recruitment and retention. How do you think your national societies would be able to be more attractive to attract and recruit more youths, as well as to retain their youth volunteers in the national society to continue working together with the national society? I guess you might also be inspired by the intergenerational dialogue yesterday in the first core session, where our senior leaders as well as our peers have shared on some of their views with regards to reimagining volunteerism. Please let us know your thoughts either in the chat box or raise your hands. Would love to hear from you. Thank you, Mariko, as well, for sharing the paper on COVID-19 in the chat box. Yep. Feel free to let us know your thoughts. And this would very well fit into, some of our outcomes of the meeting to bring for you, and we'll circulate these outcome statements for you to be able to bring back to your national societies. And speak to your senior leaders on how, young people can continue to actively contribute in the pandemic as well as post-pandemic. More localized action, Ariane mentioned, young people can have a great influence in their families, schools, and communities. Thanks, Ariane, for that. I think that's very, very relevant because we are the closest with the people around us. So sometimes instead of reaching out to maybe strangers, our easiest touch points are actually those that we see or interact with on a daily basis at home, at our schools, at our workplace, as well as in our local neighborhood. So yeah, more localized action is definitely the way forward. Thanks, Ariane. Ray's mentioned to digitalize volunteer recruitments and trainings. Yep, I think that's also very, very important, seeing as there's a lot of uncertainties surrounding whether we can actually host physical events or not. Things might have to be scraped in the last minute, say if something happens or there's a certain person who might have been tested positive. So to ensure that there are always contingency plans for digital events, for physical events, and to be able to digitalize training modules as well as recruitment platforms would definitely be very, very important for us to continue to attract and recruit volunteers in a post-pandemic world. We can also utilize social medias like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram to publicize information. Very true as well. It's also another strength of the youth, because a lot of us are also very, very active on social media. So please use this collective strength that we have to publicize the right information, useful quality information to our local circles. Xiao Yu mentioned that to spread anti-epidemic knowledge, I guess this is to minimize the spread of misinformation. Yep, it's also very, very important to ensure that we are not blinded by fake news or false information, especially with regards to health-related information. Yes, in relation to this, On also mentioned that we should follow news to know about the situation so that we can prepare and anticipate as well as respond to it. That's also true to prevent before something happens. Prevention is always better than cure. So to, for example, practice preventive measures before actually contracting the virus is definitely better than contracting the virus and then having to suffer with the virus. Yeah. So yep, thanks On for that as well. Would also like to mention that with regards to misinformation, I think there's a session, thematic learning session happening later today. So for those of you who are interested to see how young people can address misinformation, please feel free to tune in to that session. I think there's another session that is also just mentioned by that's also relevant to something that's mentioned by Rochelle, to strengthen health and hygiene promotion. That's also very relevant in pandemic times. There's also a session about thematic learning session about that later. So for those of you who are interested in this topic instead, feel free to tune in to that session. Tadek mentioned that because we're young and have a small capacity, taking action at home and around it is the best action that we can do to get big impacts. Very, very true, because when a lot of people come together, although all of them are just making tiny menial efforts, when everyone comes together, it will then be a very large effort. Daphne mentioned that we can apply what we learned and look out for the vulnerable communities and to help and to look at more virtual and creative ways of advocacy. Yep, I think we have seen actually quite a number of examples throughout the past 2 years as well, from youths in various national societies looking at different ways of advocacy as well as different ways of service delivery. If you have examples from your national societies, please reach out to us at the Asia Pacific Youth Network, so we can also then share this as resources with our other peers, sister national societies from across the region and beyond. Yep. I guess we can move on to the next bullet point. I would say the next bullet point as well, welfare or security of volunteers. How do you think your national society or maybe the RFRC, the youth networks would be able to better support you in terms of volunteers' welfare or security? Or what you as young people need during these times, especially pandemic times, especially to continue supporting you to volunteer? I think Chantal also mentioned in response to the earlier question, for some countries whereby digital platforms are still in development, especially I guess for developing countries, we should also look for alternatives to reach out to the communities and spread pandemic-related, health-related information by using certain traditional methods that might still be relevant. That's very true as well, because sometimes when we talk about digitalization, I think we forget about our rural communities, as we mentioned earlier, that might not have access to this information. So to still conduct outreach while taking care of our personal security and safety is still very, very important to ensure that we leave no one behind. Yep. Would you like to let us know how national societies can better support the welfare or security of volunteers? Dong Yu mentioned that when recruiting volunteers, organizers ought to provide basic virus preventing materials for volunteers, such as masks, hand sanitizers, and inform them of the risks and methods of protecting themselves. Yeah, I think it's very, very important to first educate ourselves before we educate others. So yes, if national societies can do this with our volunteers, either youth or beyond youth, it would definitely, if the volunteers themselves are educated, it would definitely be easier for them to also spread the same education as well as the awareness towards the pandemic to their local communities, and to also equip them, with materials, preventive materials such as masks as well as hand sanitizers, so that they can consistently practice preventive measures. I think Dong Yu raised a very important point, because maybe for some communities, this kind of things are not easily accessible to them, or it might be quite costly for them to be able to afford all these hygiene products. So if national societies could figure out maybe support volunteers in this sense, it might be very, very helpful as well. Are there any other response related to the welfare security of volunteers? Yep, I think Tin also raised a very important point on health insurance, or like insurance in general to cover the security of volunteers. I mean, even pre-pandemic, this is something that is supposed to be practiced by national societies, and we urge you to reach out to your leadership to ensure that these mechanisms are in place so that your safety and security is taken care of. Yumino mentions that to provide psychological and mental health support to volunteers. So I think during the intergeneration dialogue session yesterday as well, one of the speakers mentioned that amidst the hype and passion in volunteering, sometimes a lot of us also forget about ourselves as humans, ourselves, and also individuals, volunteers. We might also be facing a lot of struggles and challenges with the changing lifestyles, with the adaptation, with the stress and pressure that comes with our engagement in our daily life. So to also provide this support not only to communities but to volunteers and staffs themselves would be something that's very, very important for national societies to practice. Thank you for the very, very insightful sharing. The last question that we have for today is, how do you think the Asia Pacific Youth Network could better support youth? You can express your views here from an individual perspective, or from a local branch chapter youth perspective, or from a national youth body perspective. What are you expecting from the Asia Pacific Youth Network in the upcoming year to better able to reach out to you or to support you when you need us? Once again, before we end the session as well, please feel free, if you have anything to share, to raise your hand so that we can then invite you out on stage to say hi to everyone and to share your thoughts. Let us know how you envision us as a youth network to support you in moving forward. I think we really want to know this because we want to ensure that we remain relevant and we remain to be able to support your needs and interests. And it's not just something that, say, the interim committee decides to do, but it's something that is really, really necessary or needed by our youth base. Please let us know what you think about the network or even your sub-regional networks. How we can better support you and young people in your national societies. When partnerships and more opportunities from Taraka. Thanks, Taraka from Sri Lanka. When we talk about partnerships, what kind of partnerships are we looking at? Are you referring to partnerships in your national society, or global partnerships such as the one we have with the Global Youth Mobilization? It would be great if you can let us know. Experience sharing from global and regional partners. I think that also ties in very closely to Yumino's comment for the youth network to be an information sharing platform. As mentioned earlier, I think it would be great if we would be able to consolidate all the different best practices and initiatives from national societies, so that we can then ensure that if anyone needs help in a certain area, say in the area of SGBV, in the area of climate action, we then have a series of materials a library of materials and resources to be able to share with those who need it. So yep, from your responses, I think that a lot of you would want to see us, the Youth Network, more of like a resource library. We can definitely, we'll definitely take note of that and take that into consideration. But also we would like to urge for you to actually share with us any of your National Society's own best practices and initiatives so that we can then share it widely with the rest. Chantel mentioned, yep, to also provide resources or trainings, inclusion of developing countries' perspective in this COVID-19 situation, also about resource sharing, and also reaching out to, I guess, the developing countries, which a lot of here are in actually, to handle the COVID-19 situation. Partnerships and networking opportunities are also something that you are looking forward to. Kamla mentioned that youth networks could collect and share best experiences. So yep, thank you so much for all your responses. Please feel free to, I guess, either continue leaving it in the chat box or personally reach out to the Asia Pacific, to myself or even Mariko or the interim committee that will be introduced tomorrow if you have any further recommendations for the way of APYN or the direction of APYN moving forward. Dongyu would also like to see more opportunities to communicate with one another, just like what we're doing right now. We close and we hope that we would be able to organize more sessions like this or more gatherings like this to bring to bring together young people from all over our region, because we are a network and we aim to fully utilize this network to our benefits. We hope that it would be a network that is there to actually support, amplify the work that our young people are doing. We hope that we can continue to stay relevant to your needs and to your priorities. One can also raise a very good point. There is a launch function actually in this meeting where you can network with your peers, and there's a networking session right after this if I'm not mistaken. So please feel free to take this opportunity to visit the launch as well as the booths that are set up by some of our national societies as well as some of our partners, so that you can learn more about the work that they're doing. I believe a lot of them would also have left their contact details there. So please feel free to reach out if you would like to engage with their work. Before today's sessions end, I think we have also, we're also giving you guys the clue for the session so that you can figure out what's the solution at the end of the virtual gathering. Yep, so this is the clue for this session. I hope that by now you would have, at least half of the clues already. Also, tip to actually fill in our feedback forms or the surveys and questionnaires that we circulate, because one, it's very, very important for your voices to be heard. We want to listen from you. We don't want it to be something that is, decided by only the interim committee itself or from us, the youth commission, or even so we want to ensure that you are well represented. So please let us know your thoughts. And yeah, secondly, if you are a great participant of this virtual gathering, we would also like to give you a mini reward in the form of some goodies that we will be producing for this virtual gathering to be sent out to you later. I can give you a heads up. We are looking at producing face masks for the gathering, relevant to COVID-19 times, as well as some other goodies that might or might not be revealed to you during the virtual gathering. But please look forward to it. So we hope that you will be able to engage with us through our social media campaigns as well as to join as many sessions as you possibly can to learn from each other, as well as to learn from our partners that are delivering this session. There's 5 minutes left till the end of the session, but I'm not gonna hold you here for another 5 minutes. I think I am also, I've also talked a lot in this session. I hope that you're not bored hearing my voice. I'm glad that there's still 60 people in the session, but please use the remaining time and the time later before the other thematic rounds as well to network, visit the launch. Also, for those of you who have not eaten your lunch, it might be lunchtime for a lot of national societies across the region as well. Please take this time to also maybe go off screen a while and to have lunch, catch up with your family or friends. Yeah. We'll see you around later at 1. All right. Oh, at the World Showcase Cafe. Yeah, we'll have friends from the African Youth Network and the European Youth Network to share their experiences with us. And it's up to you, to participate in whichever breakout room that you would like to. The session links and information will be shared by our very amazing tag team members later. So please stay tuned both here in Airmeet and as well as in the WhatsApp group. To end the core session today, I would like to once again express my gratitude and amazement for all the work that you have been doing as volunteers in your local communities. Thank you from us at the IFRC. Thank you from us at the Asia Pacific Youth Network, and please continue to contribute to your local communities whilst taking care of your personal health and well-being. I'll see you guys again very soon in the upcoming sessions. Bye.